Hello, welcome back to another video. Start with a joke. What did the naughty alpaca say to the farmer? I'll pack up my bags and leave. Okay, here we go. We're talking about solving quadratic equations. Let's get ready. All right, so solving quadratic equations. A quadratic is just a fancy way to say that it's some sort of parabola. So it'll be in the form of ax plus ax squared. So there'll be a squared term plus bx plus c. Now, the important part here is that there is an a squared, and that's the highest power. And that's what a quadratic would be. There doesn't need to be this term or that term. It could technically be non-existent and it'll still be a quadratic. The important thing is that there is an x squared, and that's the highest. Okay, now with a quadratic, because it is like a parabola, you can have either 0, 1, or 2 solutions. So most of the ones that we'll be dealing with today will have 2 solutions. But yeah, they can also have 0 or 1 solutions. So let me show you. So there's 3 main methods that we have to solve quadratics, and I'm going to give them to you in terms of, I guess, what is the least amount of work, in my opinion, to the most amount of work. So the first one is to factorize and to use the null factor theorem. It's just a fancy way to say that if 2 things multiply together, so if A and B are multiplied together and the answer is 0, then either my first term A has to be 0 or B equals to 0. So it kind of makes sense if I times 2 things and the answer is 0, well, one of them has to be 0. So for this case here, if we're going to factorize, let's take a look at this first one. We've got x squared plus 2x, take away 24. And I'm just going to use my PSF method. I want a product of 24 and I want a sum of -2. I'm going to go through my factors and I can see that it would be 6 and 4. If you need to, go back and watch my other factorizing video. But this one will be x plus 6 and x minus 4. Okay, because -4 plus 6 gives me -24. But -4 plus 6 gives me +2, or 6 minus 4 is +2, same thing. Okay, equals to 0. And so now I factorize it, I can see, okay, this bracket times that bracket equals to 0. So either this bracket here equals to 0 or that bracket here equals to 0. So I could do it the long way, where I kind of see, okay, x minus 4 equals to 0. And then I can see here that if I want to solve for x, I'll just plus x to both sides. And that gives me one answer of x equals to 4. And I can see for this one here, the value of x to make the second bracket 0 would be x equals to -6. Because if I have -6 plus 6, that's also going to give me 0. So in this case here, those are your 2 solutions, x equals to 4 and x equals to -6, 2 solutions. Okay. And again, let's do one where we've got, I guess, what do you call it? Non-monic, right? So if there's a number in front, what we are going to do, if I can figure out how this thing works. All right. Nope, that's fine. I'll work with it. Okay, so for here, let's use the PSF method. So the product, we're doing the first term times the last term. So it's going to be 35 and it's going to be -35. The sum is going to be 34. And I want to find 2 numbers that will multiply to give me -35, but will add to give me 34. And I can see that would just be 35 and -1. Because 35 times -1 gives me -35. But 35 minus 1 gives me 34. So those are our 2 factors. So again, doing this the long way. If you've got another method, please be my guest. But in this case here, all we're going to do is we are going to separate the middle term into our 2 different factor terms. So in this case here, I've got 5x squared. And instead of writing plus 34x, what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace it with 35x take away 1x. So I'm going to write it as plus 35x take away x. And then I've got the -7 still equals to 0. And then I'll do this by pairs. So I can see I've got 5x for the first terms I've got an x plus 7, and I can see here I'm going to take out a minus x, and then it'll be x plus, oops, 1, not. Let's try that again. I've made a few mistakes here because it's a common factor of -1, and then it would be x plus 7 here equals to 0. And taking this on a little further, I can see x plus 7 is in one bracket, and then the other bracket must be what's left, which is 5x and a -1. Okay, now hopefully I've left enough room here, and it looks like I'm getting a bit close. So now that I've got this, I'm going to look at each individual bracket and see what the value of x would be that would make it 0. So for this one here, I can see x would equal -7 to make that bracket 0. And for this one here, it's a bit trickier. I want 5x minus 1 to equal to 0. So I'm going to write the whole bracket, let it equal 0. I can see that 5x would have to equal to 1. And then I can see here, pushing the 1 over to the other side, and then I can see x would equal to 1 on 5. Okay, so that would be your two solutions for that quadratic. Okay, now the other option that you have, second option, I think is slightly more effort, but maybe if you're not quick with the math, might be a better option for you. It's using the quadratic formula. Now, with the quadratic formula, it's important that it's important that we recognize we need to know what A, B, and what C is. Okay, so you can see that A always has to be the term, and let me highlight this. A always has to be the term with the x squared, B always has to be the term with the x, and C is always the term that doesn't have any x's involved. And the important part is that it's all in one equation and it equals to 0. So if we take a look at the question that we've got down here using the quadratic formula, we can see that it is not in the same form, right? We do kind of see that, A is 4, but I don't have it all on one side equaling 0. So that's going to be my first move. My first move is going to be to get it all on one side together. Anyone know how to fix this? Did I fix it? Oh, genius. So I'm going to rewrite this 4x squared to get it all on one side. I'm going to move all of these over to the other side. So the way that I would get that 2x over is to minus 2x. And to get that positive 1 over, I would minus 1. And then now it's magically equals to 0 on the right-hand side because we've removed those. Now that we've done that, I can see that 4 is A. B is not going to be 2, but -2. And C is going to be my 1. So in this case here, to solve for x, x is going to equal to minus B. So B is -2. And just be careful with your negatives. I'll put everything in brackets. It's going to be plus, minus. That's what's going to give us our two solutions. B squared, which is again minus 2 squared, minus 4 times A, which is 4, times C, which is -1, all over 2 times A, which in this case is 2 times 4. And then, so I'm not going to put in the calculator because, you can do that in your own time. But what I want you to recognize here is the first time you do this, you're going to just put the plus in your calculator and you get whatever answer that is. And then the next time you just kind of click back, you'll change it to a minus and then you'll get a separate answer. That'll be your second solution. Okay, there'll be some times where it doesn't work. If it doesn't work, you'll say there's no solutions. Sometimes you'll only get one, but that's how this question goes. Okay, now the last one is this completing the square, but we're going to cover that in 2 exercises time, so don't fret. That is it for this lesson. Have fun and enjoy, and I'll see you guys later.